Welcome back to the blog. This is my genealogy profile of my maternal grandmother, Rebecca Florence Smith, known in my family as Nan. She was the second of 13 children born to Albert Campbell Smith and Mary Susan Mallow in Randolph County, West Virginia. I didn't know her very well at all. She died when I was 15, and by the time I was old enough to really appreciate her, dementia had begun its attack on her mind. In my younger years, she was really pretty intimidating. This photo from her genealogy page is from 1947, almost 20 years before I was born. But really, in my memories, she looked just the same when my mother and I visited her in the 70s. For much of my life, the story was that Nan's parents had died when she was young, and there were no siblings. As early as 1945, she wrote to an insurance company saying that, quote, "My father and my mother died approximately 32 years ago when I was in school. I was born March 6, 1897, unquote. Her father was still alive when she wrote that letter, though she'd had no contact with her parents or siblings for 20 years by then. Nan married Edward Blakey Baldinger Sr. in 1921 in Orange, New Jersey. Soon after that, they resided in New Orleans, where Edward was in the lumber business. And in fact, Edward had been in New Orleans since at least 1920, partnering with James Kirby in Kirby and Baldinger, a yellow pine service, according to the New Orleans city directories. But Baldinger is listed in 1919 city directory in Houston, working for Trinity River Lumber. So how and why did Edward and Rebecca end up getting married in New Jersey? I assume it was something of a private event, given that I found no articles about it. The Baldinger family was somewhat prominent in the Galveston area, as evidenced by this piece in Galveston, History of the Island and City, about Andrew Baldinger, Edward Blakey Baldinger's grandfather. My uncle, Edward Blakey Baldinger Jr., Nan and Edward's firstborn, was born in November 1922, about 13 months after they were married. Family legend shares that not long after Uncle Ed was born, Nan wrote the family back in West Virginia saying that she was married and had a child and didn't want to speak with them again, cutting off contact forever as far as anyone knew. My father, along with my mother's sister, Gail Baldinger Cahill, worked on my grandmother's genealogy for years. As I recall, it started in earnest in the mid-70s when Nan was recovering from surgery for a broken hip. She began speaking names that no one in the family had ever heard before. Gail was sitting with her and wrote the names down and then asked Nan about them later. She denied knowing anything about any of the names. And throughout 1975, Dad and Gail contacted several offices in West Virginia. 2 years later, in 1977, Gail made a research trip to Salt Lake City and the Mormon archives. Sometime in the next 3 years, Gail found the correct date of birth and Nan's parents' names, although when and how she found them, we no longer know. In 1984, while she was working at the National Archives, Gail reviewed the 1910 U.S. Census and discovered the names and dates of birth of Nan's surviving siblings. My dad planned a visit to Randolph County the following year. In preparation for the trip, he wrote the postmaster of Harmon, West Virginia, asking for information on the family. The postmaster passed the letter on to a friend of Hazel Smith, Hedrick, a sister of Nan's, or Rebecca Florence Smith, who quickly responded, and they reestablished contact between the families after some 60 years. In 1985, after Nan had died, Dad contacted the Randolph County clerk for a birth certificate this time with the correct date and parents, but they had no record of her birth. As far as anyone knows, her birth was never recorded at the county or the state level. The Smith family still holds a reunion each summer at the Albert Smith farm. The last one I attended was in 1993. I had planned to make it in 2020 and had hoped to do it again in 21. That still hasn't happened. I've had access to newspapers.com recently and have found disturbingly few articles about the Baldingers in New Orleans. Most of what I've found are articles about my Uncle Ed Baldinger. I did figure out that the Times-Picayune articles at newspapers.com end in 1919. Even so, searching the Picayune archives directly doesn't give me much about my grandparents. I assume that's mostly just because she was a very private person, although I do occasionally wonder if she was still trying to hide from her West Virginia family. Barring a miraculous discovery of letters or a diary, we're probably never going to know exactly why Nan cut herself off from her family. I would love to track down her travels a little bit better, though. I know she was in New Jersey in 1921, however briefly. There was some speculation from her siblings at one point that she'd ended up in New York to supposedly work for a lumberman. That makes some bit of sense, as her birthplace in West Virginia was something of a hub for the lumber business in the area. I doubt I'm going to have much success there, though, given my luck so far with newspaper archives. I know there are plenty of Smith cousins out there, given the number of siblings Nan had. So if you are a Smith cousin, please feel free to share information about your branch of the family tree. You can use the contact form on the genealogy side of my website or the suggest tab on any of the Smith family member pages there. And that's all I've got for now, so thanks and have a great day.